Howdy partner, David Minkin here, starting player with Connect More, and welcome to another edition of Avoid the Rules. We'll drop the Texas accent for now. It's a video of instruction and demonstration that helps ease rule understanding and learning. Easy start. And as you can tell, we're going to do a Texas-based oil game. We are going to do black gold. These pictures here are actually not the pictures that represent black gold. Black gold is set in the 20s in the Permian Basin on West Texas, and these pictures here are Spindletop around the turn of the century, around 1903 in East Texas. But it's a very thematic game, and the petroleum industry is something that I'm actively involved in. In fact, I spend every day in my real job actually looking for the sweet, sweet Texas tea. And if I found enough of that, some of this black gold, well then I'd probably be doing this full time, but unfortunately I haven't found quite enough yet. So I'm going to deviate a little bit from my normal avoid the rules pattern, and I'm going to add some color and some flavor as to how the game actually relates into the actual petroleum industry as I know it. It's not going to be comprehensive, but I'll give you some flavors. If you want to be introduced to the petroleum industry or have a little bit of a flavor for how a game can be used to describe what the petroleum industry is like, this is the game. It's absolutely phenomenal. I've used this game before when people say, hey, you know what? I would like to learn a little bit about the petroleum industry. I'm like, great, come over, we're going to play black gold. And you would be surprised by how many things that go on inside this game that we can actually talk about and have discussion points, and it makes for a really enriching game experience. So if you're new to the petroleum industry and you want to get a bit more of a flavor, watch the video, play the game, and especially play it with people who are in the industry, because it'll help promote discussion and conversation about other things that they've experienced, and it's a really rewarding game for that. So I'm going to be adding some flavor and some personal commentary along the way. I hope you enjoy it. Please leave your comments, and as usual, if you enjoy this video and the rest of my videos, please come find me on Facebook and like me. That would be really great. It's always encouraging. And similarly on YouTube, if you want to follow along, that would be fantastic. So enjoy the Avoid the Rules, and I will see you next time. So let's get started with black gold, or Texas tea. I don't care, whatever you want to call it, because at our house we call it a mortgage payment. So before we get started, let's just set the mood a little bit here. So here I got a big picture of the Spindletop field circa 1903. Actually, I got two pictures there of two different areas. And this picture was taken several years after the main Spindletop discovery was made. But you see, it only took a couple years before everybody and their dog to get in there. I think there's actually even a dog in that picture, to get in there and just set up shop and just start drilling as closely together as possible and just drain all the oil out of the Spindletop. And this is typically what happens, maybe not to this degree, but you get the quick, nimble guys, forward-thinking companies that get out there and they make these discoveries, and then comes big bad oil and they come in and take up the rest of the leases and kind of squeeze the little guy out. And what's really nice about black gold is it models this behavior. So what happens is Spindletop was discovered around the turn of the century, 1900, and within a couple of years, it's completely overrun by big oil companies, and everybody's on to the new idea. So then the small and the ingenious guys, the forward-thinking oil discoverers, they head out west and they find the Permian Basin. And that's where black gold is set. It's set on the other side of Texas, in West Texas, and it's the Permian Basin around the 1920s. And so again, now you have the small guys, the forward-thinking, the oil explorers. They're out there, and they're just one step ahead of all the other guys before they come in and make the field look something like that. And so that's really, really exciting here with black gold, because that's actually shown in the game and represented in the game, and I'm going to show you that in just a second. So that's one thing that makes this game really, really thematic, and really helps you feel that you're an oil baron, or trying to be an oil baron back in the good old days of Texas. So here I've set up the board. It's a modular board, and there's some different components to it, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But I've set it up for 4 players, and so over on the right-hand side, you see I got yellow and red, and on the left-hand side, I got green and blue. So whenever I describe a game, the first thing I like to talk about is, well, how do I win the game? And the game is simply won by the person who gains the most wealth. And the way you gain wealth is very simple. It's by acquiring money. And the money here is represented by little cardboard chits. And if you want to jack up the thematic feeling of this a little bit, I strongly recommend poker chips, because you can just imagine a bunch of oil men at the end of the day throwing their daily wages down and betting it away in some dark, smoky saloon or in the shadows of some of these oil wells. And good news is every player starts off with $15,000 to get them started. So woohoo, we're well on our way to wealth. Well, not so simple. So the question you probably have now is like, great, so if I want to win, I need the most amount of money. Sure, no problem. Now, how do I make money? Well, there are two primary ways that you can make money in the game. There is only one way that you can actually make money during the game, and the second way is how you make money after the game is ended. It's a game-ending scoring condition. So the way that you're going to make money is you're going to sell oil, and it's represented here by these little oil plumes that stack together. And so you can pull them apart, and you can, they come in little single little bits here. And so this really cool little plastic bits. My boys, age 2 and 3, they love playing with them, and they love playing this game because of all the kind of the toilet qualities in the game. So you take this oil here, and what you're going to do is this oil is going to be sold at in the oil markets here. And there's 3 different oil markets, and the oil markets are going from top to the bottom. We got Hudson Oil, we have Jet Oil, and we have the Standard Oil Trust. And you see, so that's the leftmost side of the board, and each market has a color for each player in the board in the game. So you can see you can have maximum 5 players in the game, and there's also a price scale, and the price scale is the same for all of them. It goes from $1,500 all the way up to $9,000, and the game starts with each of the markets at $5,000. So what you're going to do is during the game you are going to you're going to move your oil that you discover over on this side of the board, and basically this represents the region, the Permian region, West Texas, where you're actually drilling the wells. You're going to move the oil discovered over there into your markets, and you're going to sell your oil. And the way that you're going to sell your oil is through a bidding mechanism. And you're going to sell your oil, and the price per plume will be represented by the price scale here on either side of all 3 of the markets. So you can pick and choose which market and speculate, do some commodity speculation as to when and how much you think the different oil plumes will sell to maximize your profit. So that is the only way you can actually make money during the game, is by selling oil at one of those 3 markets. If you are playing a 5-player game, there is a 4th auction that occurs, and that's called the liquidation auction, and that gives you the opportunity to sell oil at any one of those markets after the fact. So you'll go through all 3 markets. You always go from top to bottom. So the auction goes this market, that market, this market, and with 5-player games, there's a liquidation phase, which I'll explain later, and then you get a 4th opportunity to actually sell. Only one person will get to sell their oil per turn. And so then that really makes the bidding mechanism really tense, especially if you really need to sell some oil and get some money and generate a little bit of an engine, because you need money to drill your wells over here. And again, we start with $15,000, but that's not a whole lot of money for an oil baron. You need a lot more than that to build your dynasty. So that is the first and primary way that you're going to make money, and that is the only way you're going to make money during the game. Now, at the very end of the game, when the game ends, there will be a game-ending scoring condition. And the way that works is you see that each player has their color represented by a little train on these train tracks. And each player starts on that little platform there, the little wooden platform you see between all of the trains. And we also have a black train that's on that same scale, and that's the big bad oil baron, and that represents big oil. So those are all the big ugly companies that you usually see people petitioning against Greenpeace, whatever, because they're big easy targets. Now you see that we have a head start on them. They are late to the game because they're still over here, monkeying around trying to squeeze that last little bit of oil out, and they don't really have any really ingenious thinkers on their staff, and so they're late to the game. They're not really paying attention to what's going on to the Permian. But our activity and our discoveries and our good oil barren qualities, they're going to be found out soon enough, and throughout the game they start chugging along on that track on the left hand side, and they're going to soon catch up to us and even surpass us until they get to the actual end of their track. When they get to the end of their track, the game is over. Now when that happens, all of us will have moved our trains along the track, and there's a seesaw, and I'm going to explain that in a little bit. But our trains will have moved up and back and forth on this track as well. The person whose train is furthest along the track will get an additional $5,000 bonus for every oil derrick he still has on the right-hand side of the board, which represents the place where we drill oils. So the oil derrick, everybody again will start with 5 oil derricks here, represented by these really nice plastic little pieces in their player colors. And you see that there's a hole on top of the oil derricks. Well, that's where, when you drill the oil, that's where the oil is actually going to be. You just plug it in how much you discover, and woohoo, it's raining oil. So that's how it's going to look. So that at the end of the game, people might have different oil derricks that are out on the play area, and the person whose train is furthest along this track will get $5,000 for every oil derrick that's remaining. The person whose train is second furthest along the track will get $3,000 per oil derrick remaining, and everybody else will get $1,000 per oil derrick remaining. In addition to the oil derrick endgame scoring, all oil plumes that are left remaining either on oil derricks or in the marketplace you will receive an additional $1,000 for that as well. So to reiterate, during the game, you get wealth by selling at the markets, those 3 markets over there. That is the only way. At the end of the game, there are bonuses given to the person whose train is furthest along the track there in the middle, the train track in the middle, and those bonuses are a dollar value per derrick left. $5,000 for the first player, for the person furthest along, and $3,000 for the second player. And those bonuses are tied. Should there be a tie, so they're split, and $1,000 for everybody else. So what that represents in a very abstract way, this train track in the middle here with your little trains, that more or less represents your infrastructure. That represents your ability to get oil to the market. And the board is set up just beautifully for this, because on the right hand side, right here and here, you see there's 6 modular tiles. In a 2-player game, there's only going to be 3. But there are 6 modular tiles, and that's where all the oil drilling is going to go on. And the way that you're going to go and find places to drill for oil is you got these beautiful little trucks, these little plastic trucks, and they all start anywhere you want in each of the player colors in that first row closest towards us. And you drive the trucks around, and what you're going to do is you are going to go and prospect and explore for oil. And once you drill the oil, you're going to go, woohoo, I've made discovery. And then you're going to transport that oil 1 plume at a time during each round. You're going to transport it over to the markets here. But in order to do that, your train has to be progressed far enough up this track such that it is further ahead. It has to be further up the track than if you basically see that these boxes are aligned. It has to be further along the track than any of your oil derricks. And that basically says, you know what? We have built the infrastructure to handle all of our oil discoveries. And if your oil discoveries outpace your infrastructure, well, then you're going to have to use other people's infrastructure to transport your oil to the market, and you're going to have to pay them to do that. So it's a really, in an abstract way, it does a great job of representing the infrastructure that you yourself as a company have built within the Permian Basin to transport your oil to the market. So I just absolutely love it. And then when we go over to the actual modular board here, it's fantastic because the board is modular, you can flip it over. It's got reverse sides, and there's little, if I can zoom in, there's little numbers and letters on each row there, and you just set it up, and it's described in the back of the rule book as to how to set it up per player, as to how many players that you have. And the neat thing about that is you can flip them around any way that you want, and they don't have to be necessarily organized in any way, which really gives to a unique exploration moment all the time. So that's the overview of the game. Let's find some oil, transport it over to the market, and at the market is where you're going to sell your oil. Now,
that's where the main mechanic of this game comes in. The main mechanic of this game is bidding, because you are going to be bidding on your right to sell your oil. But what makes this game just so beautiful and so thematically consistent in my mind is you're allowed to bluff. And so by bluffing, you get this feeling, you get this pit deep in your stomach when you know that you're bluffing, and you're basically just trying to screw your opponent out of some of their cash to weaken their position so that you can be in a stronger position relative to them during your next turn. But when you are bluffing and you know it, you can't be caught, because you'll be penalized really, really heavily. And so that feeling that you get, that deep in your stomach, and the adrenaline's flowing, and with each successive bluff you make, your heart just goes a little bit higher up in your chest, and you can just feel it beating through your throat. That's the same feeling you get when you're drilling an exploration well and you're watching the logging while drilling, and you're seeing it go down, and you start seeing the gamma ray kick over, and you know you've hit the sand, and your heart starts beating up in your throat, and you're just trying to see, is this a discovery? Am I going to be popping champagne tonight? And it's that same feeling. And so I really like that bluffing mechanism that's built into the bidding that's done within this game. So this is primarily a bidding game. And if you like bidding, within that bluffing mechanism just gives you that extra moment of adrenaline, and really takes your breath away when you're really going for it and you're trying to make a big move for the next turn. So I digress, but as you can tell, this theme of the game to me is awesome, because I myself in the oil industry, so it's really, really great. Now, the best way to describe this game is just to go over every player gets one of their own player aids in the color, and frankly speaking, this is one of the best player aids I have ever seen. This one and the Yedo clan boards are fantastic, because if you just follow very simply all the steps right through here, there is no way you can screw this game up. I'm doing the avoid the rules not because I really need to every time, but just because I love the game and I just love talking about it. And this also gives me a great opportunity to talk about some of the ties that this game actually has to the petroleum industry, which I think would be very useful for people as well. So the very first thing that we're going to do, and I'm just going to kind of roll along here, and hopefully this will work out okay, is the very first thing you're going to do is we're going to adjust the oil prices, and that's going to be done at the market. And the way that this is done is you see that we got a die, and a die has numbers ranging from 2 to 4, and they're either blue or red. And if you also go look at the market, you'll notice that the colors, the high numbers are blue, the low numbers are red, and the middle numbers are white. So what this simply means is we start again the game at 5,000. So we're going to adjust the market. So by doing that, we're going to, if I can focus on there. By doing that, oh well, I mean, it's not going to work. And by doing that, we just simply roll the dice. And so by rolling the die, I take it, I roll it down, and I rolled, in this particular case, I rolled a red 3. Whoops, here, let me get it up here. Well, some technical difficulties here, but I rolled a red 3. There you go. So I rolled a red 3. Now, the fact that in the market we are actually we're actually already in the white, you must honor the color of the die. So by rolling a red 3, I take the slider and I slide it down 3 spaces. So I'll slide it down 1, 2, 3. So now the value of any plume of oil that's sold here is worth $3,500. Now next time when we go to adjust the market, when I roll the die, the color of the die does not matter, it's just be the number, because since we are already in red, the price adjustment must go up. So you ignore the color. So suppose it's the next turn, I roll it again. Although I did roll a red 4, so that's good for this demonstration, it doesn't matter that it's red, I would move this up 4 anyhow. The only time you care about the color of the die is when you are in the white space of any of these sliders, then you would respect the color of the die. Otherwise, if you're in the blue, you must go down, and if you're in the red, you must go up. So we adjust that price, and the person who does all this adjustment is the starting player. So here we actually get a blue 3. Whoops, there we go, we get a blue 3. Woohoo! So Jet Oil, they're selling oil for a premium. So we go 1, 2, 3. That must be some sweet oil that they're selling out of there. And we roll the last one, and again we get another blue 3. Woo! There we go, we get another blue 3. Whoops. And I guess I should zoom out a little bit so you can see what I'm doing here. So we get another blue 3 for U.S. Standard Oil Trust. So we just slide that up, 1, 2, 3. So we've adjusted the oil. Now the next thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to draw cards. And what I have here is I got 3 decks of cards. We have these brown cards here, and these are called the special cards, or I can't remember the exact name of these cards. But anyhow, you always draw one of these cards, and there's 12 in the game. And what makes these cards unique is they, at the very top, and I'll explain all the symbology and stuff in a second. At the very top, they have this, that's the black engine, and that's the oil baron. And so they always have a number associated with that, and that tells you how many spaces the oil baron moves during that time. So you can see you got the oil baron right down here. He moves up 2, 1, 2. So the oil baron, he's starting to get wise to what we're doing over here. He's starting to catch up on technology. He's not so dumb after all. Well, I guess they got to be, those companies got to be big some way, somehow. So so here they come. And then the next thing that on these cards it has a picture of these what are called license cards, or these brown cards, and you see that this is this whole stack here. So it tells you how many cards you're entitled to there. So it says 2, and then there's also a movement that you're allowed, and the movement is always represented by 2 wheels. You have both the truck wheel and the train wheel, because your movement is split between how you want to move your train and how you want to move your truck over in the exploration area. And then some of these cards have special bonuses associated with them. So when you draw the cards, the starting player will draw one of these brown cards, because that's what controls the movement of the oil baron. And then you will draw these gray, or these standard event cards, and you'll draw these gray cards. And they typically, all they typically have on them is are the number of license cards you get. So in this case, it'd be 4, and the number of movement points you're going to get between both your train and your truck, which is 10. So you're going to draw as many regular license cards as there are players. So in this particular case, we're playing with 4. So I'm going to draw 4 of these cards, and I just lay them all out like so. And so you'll see that there is 1 card extra than players, and that's, it gives you a little bit of flexibility when you go. So here's our 4 cards. So then now, what people are going to do in turn order, you are actually going to now choose an action card. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, right, being the starting player, I got to choose first. I'm going to take this special action card, and it tells me, if I can zoom in there, it tells me that I get to take 2 license cards. So I take this, I plunk it in here in my deck, and I'm going to take 2 of these license cards. Now is a good time to talk about license cards, because license cards, here we go. License cards they look like this. They're either a value of 1 or a value of 2. Here I'm doing really awesome. I got 2 with a value of 2. So these cards, you keep these values secret from everybody else, because this is essentially your bidding currency within the game. So then when you get to the stage when it's time to bid on the right to sell oil at any one of these 3 spots, you will do that with these license cards. And you don't care the number of license cards, you care about the total value of that's printed here on the license card. So here I got a total value of 4. So I could bid up to 4 for the right to sell, and I could bid beyond that, but at that point in time I'd be bluffing. So I get my 2 license cards, woohoo, and then now we just go around. So I'm going to put my 2 cards here in my deck. So here we go. So I'm going to keep these separate. Meanwhile, the guy sitting over here, my opponents, they're all going to go do the same thing. So let me just zoom out a little bit. They're all going to do much the same thing. So he's going to say, well, right, I want to get a head step. I really want to move my guys. So I'm going to take this card, because I only get 2 license cards, but it allows me to move my train and my truck a lot of movement points, 14 movement points. So he's going to take two cards, so he takes that over there. This card here is not secret at all. You can just leave it there. So he's going to take 2 license cards. Well, it doesn't look like he's so lucky. His values are only 1, but I don't know that. As far as I know, we might be tied in terms of our license cards. So he takes his 2. The other player, he's going to go, well, I'm going to do this. I want 5 and 8. So he takes that, he takes his card, takes his 5 licenses when he takes his card. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'll just throw them over there. And then similarly, the red player, he says, right, I have a choice now between these final 2 cards. I'm going to take this 10 and the 4. So then this card, the remaining one, it just gets discarded, that out of the game. He takes a 10 and the 4, and he takes 4 licenses. So now everybody has got some cards that allow them some movement. They got their licenses. We're ready to play. So now if you're just following along here, we prospect and we drill for oil. This is where the magic happens. So then the best way I can describe this is when you're working your way down these cards, and here I'll just zoom in this way. When you're working your way down this card, work from top to bottom. If you just do the sequence of events, even if you're not following along, from top to bottom, you can't screw up. So first thing we did was, this was a special action card. We moved the oil baron. Check, there he is, he's moved. And then everyone, after they picked up their card, the first thing they did was we picked up our licenses. Check, everybody's got their licenses. We can see that around the board. And then the next thing we do is we're gonna move. And again, here we can either move trucks or we can move trains. And this guy can move a total of 4 spaces. And what's really neat is when you start the game, you can start on any one of these columns in the first row closest towards us. So the starting player here is blue, so he's going to go right. I can move my truck and my train 4 movement spots. So let's zoom in on blue here. And he's got a few little choices he can make, because when we set up the game, such that you see all of those little dots. Well, those are basically an aerial representation of all the possible places you can put oil derricks. And now is a good time to talk about what they mean. So when you look at that, you see that the place where you can drill oil derricks is either got 1 spot on it, 2 spots, or 3 spots on it. And what this simply is that essentially means, basically in the game it says how deep each well is going to go. Basically the 1s are shallower wells, and then the 2s and the 3s can get progressively deeper. Well, actually, I lied. The 3 is deeper. The 2 is a true Wildcat well, and let me just explain that real quick. So, again, your player aid is just awesome for this. So if we look at your player aid, you see again, here's the 3 different types of oil wells that you can have. So if you want to drill an oil well that's only this 1 spot, it's going to cost you $4,000 because there's less piping required. Maybe, you know, it's just a simpler well to drill. It's going to cost, and then the possible values you can get on it are 2, 3, or 4, and what that means is if you look at any one of these tiles, when you lay them out on the board, is you flip them over and there's actually a number. Oops, there's actually a number on the back, and that number tells you how many oil plumes you get to put on the rig when you drill it. So like that 6, that's fantastic. That's the best well you can get in the game, because you see this was a 3. And so you see a 3 would cost you $8,000 to drill, but the value is either 4, 5, or 6. So this is the absolute best well you can drill in the game. So woohoo! So we're shooting our 6 shooters up in the air, clicking our heels together, sipping the Texas tea. Life is good. So that you would drill this, and the way that would work is then you would take your oil derrick. You take your oil derrick here. And so there you see I already got 2 plumes, so here's 3, and you just stack them up together, 3. And like this is just awesome for us because it really has a nice representation as to just how awesome your discovery is. So there you go, there's 6 big plumes on there. And so everybody can marvel, and you can cast shadows of oil down upon the trucks around you. So it's just fantastic for that, the quality of that. So that's how these, going back to here, so that's how these are set up. Now the thing I should point out is when you have the 1 or the 3, when you drive your truck up to it, so the way that you drill these wells is you have to drive your truck so it's orthogonally adjacent to any one of those spots, and you can drill the well. So here, if I'm blue, this cost me 1 movement point because I'm driving on the plains and I'm up here. So that's 1 of my 4 movement points. But then I don't have to drill the well right away. You know, what this is really neat is actually in the oil industry, this is representative of the scouts that are out there, the guys that are basically sitting across the road with their binoculars, seeing how many drill stems are going, or how many casing points are going down, and how deep these guys are drilling. You can get some knowledge, and it won't cost you anything. So you can actually take this tile and flip it over while you're driving by, and this is a free action. You can look at that and go, well, that's a 3. So if I drill this, I'm going to get 3 oil plumes. So I can put that back and have a think about that, is do I really want to drill that? Well, then if I go back and I look at my handy dandy player reference, you see that for a well spot of 1, that's kind of a middle of the road well. I could do worse and I could do slightly better. But you know, that 3 is not so bad. Or I could continue moving, but I'm going to move that one well. I say, right, I'm going to drill it. So you take the tile and you retire that from the game, and then you show everybody, woohoo, I just found 3 oil plumes. So you take that, take your discovery and you put it on there, and you have 3 oil plumes, and everybody marvels at how great of an oil finder you are. And then, but I'm not done yet, because I have, let's see here, I have 5 movement points left. Sorry, oh, why am I showing you this? I want to be showing you this. I have 3 movement points left because I only used 1 and on my truck. So now let's go over to our train. So my geologists, my geophysicists, they're doing good work over there. Well, how about my engineer? And I don't mean engineer as in train driving engineer. I mean as in my, how are my facilities engineers doing? How are my reservoir engineers doing? They need to keep up with the awesome work that we're doing over here. And they will. So this gives them an opportunity to actually start building your infrastructure in a Permian Basin. So I take my my blue train and I can move them up 1, 2, 3. So my total movement on this move was a total of 4. So I've accomplished this. So everybody's high-fiving. We're building some infrastructure. One thing I want to point out is movement costs are not the same everywhere that you go. Your engineer, as the facilities get a little bit more difficult to build, the cost to move your train increases throughout as the track goes on. So you see that there's a big 2 bar that goes across the train. In order to cross that bar and all the spaces beyond that bar, it costs you 2 movement points to move your train. So for an example, this train would be, this would be 1, then it would be 2, 3. Even though I only moved 1 space, it's going to cost me 2 of my precious movement points to move beyond. And then once we get to the 3, it's going to cost 3 movement points. So that's how the movement points work for the train. Similarly, you'll notice that over here where we're drilling our discoveries, there are different types of terrain. There's your normal kind of tanny brown terrain, that's called your plains terrain, and that just costs 1 movement point. But then you also see these, to me they look like craters, but I guess they're hills. And those hills will cost you, and again, you go to your handy dandy reference sheet, if I can get it to focus on here. Okay, maybe not. Here, let's zoom back out. There we go. So here you go. So to drive across a hill costs 3 movement points, and to drive across the rough patch costs 2 movement points. So there is that. Now, a couple other things to keep in mind when you're driving your trucks. You can drive over these spaces. That doesn't matter. If the well's not drilled, you can drive over it just like as a plain movement point. That's not a problem. You cannot drive through built derricks, though. That you cannot do. The trucks must move orthogonally anywhere that they go. And the other thing to keep in mind with the truck movement is that I think that's it, actually. I might be forgetting something, but that's more or less it. So then there, I've discovered some oil. I've moved my train up. And the added advantage you get with these special action cards, and again, continue moving down, so now we've moved. Well, I got this this symbol here, and it says $2,000/barrel, and it shows oil just raining down on me. So that's fantastic. That's got to be good. So, and it is good. What this means is for an additional $2,000 per well that I have out in the drilling area. In this particular time, I only have 1. I can spend an extra $2,000 for an additional plume of oil per well, and I'm going to do that. So what I would do was I take an additional plume and I plunk it on here, and I pay my $2,000. Oh, and I forgot to pay my $4,000 for actually drilling the well. So I should have drilled that first for those of you paying attention. And there you have it. So now I've actually made my discovery a little bit juicier, and that is actually called drill deeper. So I drilled a little bit deeper, found another sweet spot, and it's fantastic. So then that's this part here, the prospect and drill for oil. That's step number 4. And we would go around in turn order, and everybody would do exactly what I've just done. Okay, so I've described what this symbol means at the bottom of the card. I'm going to quickly just go through all the different special symbols here that are at the bottom of the cards and what that actually means, just so we don't have to flip open that rule book after all. So this one here again was for every oil derrick that you have that's already in existence, you get to pay an additional $2,000 to go doink and put another oil plume right on top of the existing oil wells. So that's that one. This particular card is one that shows that if $5,000 with a little dice symbol here. And what that means is when you're out exploring and you go and you drill a well, say here for example, you can pay an additional $5,000 to drill an additional well that's on any plane space that's orthogonally adjacent to your truck. So in every turn, you're only allowed to drill one well, and the movement of your truck stops at the moment that you decide to drill a well. That's the end of your truck movement. So you can, for an additional $5,000, you can pay that and then say, right, I'm going to drill another well right here. But then the question, and you don't have to drill it on one of those pre-existing spots here. You can just, as long as it's on a plane space orthogonally adjacent to your truck. But then you go, well, how many oil plumes do I get? Well, that's why the die is shown right here. You roll the die, and whatever number you get on the die is how many plumes you get. So I roll the die here. Woohoo! Look at that. I rolled a 4. Yeah. So I rolled a 4. The color doesn't matter in this case. So then I would take 4 oil plumes and I just stick them on top. And yeah, that's good for you. You just made a discovery. $5,000 for 4 oil plumes. Then the next card here. Oh, that's the same one. Now this card here, where it shows a picture of the train with a backwards arrow and a number next to it, this one is awesome. This is where you're dealing with the engineers over here, and what this allows you to do, suppose it's, let's say it's Blue's turn, this allows you to move all other opposing players' trains, not the Black Baron. The Black Baron never goes backwards. The Black Baron only cares about what's going on at top here. You get to move everyone else's players back 3 spaces. It doesn't matter what the movement, like if they're in the 2, if they're up in the 2 space or the 3 or the 3 units, that's how much it costs to move each space. This is spaces. It doesn't care about the cost. So if it was Blue's turn, then red would go back 1, 2, 3. Green would go back 1, 2, 3, and yellow, even though it's way up here, still goes back 3 spaces. 1, 2, 3. Doesn't matter how many points it costs to move forward. So that's a really great way to kind of equalize out the infrastructure that's existing within the area. So that's what that one does. This one shows a bunch of oil barrels with a 2 beside it, and I believe there's ones that have a 4 as well. I can't quite remember. What this means is during the prospecting phase where you're actually drilling for oil, you get to take 2 oil plumes. So you take them from the supply, you take these 2 oil plumes here, like this, and you get to put them immediately in the market. You don't have to put them there, so you get to put them anywhere in the market. So say it's Blue's turn, I could just plunk them right here. But you have to do that, I'll just confirm this, you have to do that before you're done the prospect and drill for oil phase. So this is perform a special action there on the bottom. You have to do that in that phase. You can't do it later, so it has to be done in that phase. And the other one that you have here, you see you have a $sign in the barrel with these arrows, is you can go and adjust the price of any one market. You can't divide this up. It has to be just one market. You can adjust it up or down as you see fit. So suppose I'm up at the top market there, and I go, wow, that's just too low, and I really need to sell some oil right now. Then with this card, I could say, well, right, I'm going to adjust the price of oil for, and I'm choosing to move it up. So then I could just do this, and I go 1, 2, 3, 4. Whoops, where was it? 1, 2, 3, 4. So I could do that. And those are the special action cards. Now you do the extract and transport oil. Now this is the time where we actually take oil from our discoveries over here on these 6 modular boards here, wherever they are, and we transport them over to any one of these markets. Now, so what you do is you simply, this is the kind of the bookkeeping part of the turn, you just simply take your oil well, and you only just take off one oil. So when you drill these wells, the number of turns that they're going to be on the board can be simply counted by looking at the number of plumes that are still existing there. If you were to take away the last plume that was on the top there, if it was at that time, and your derrick ends up looking like that, then you just simply return it back to your own inventory, and then it's available for further drilling in the future. So no problem there. But in this particular case, we we leave those on there, and I take my plume, and if I had multiple wells, I would take all the different plumes from there, and then I get to move them over to any one of these three areas. And this time I go, well, both of these particular markets have the highest value right now. If I was to sell this plume, I'd get $6,500 per plume. So I'm going to punk it here in jet oil. So I put it right there in my color, and then you go in turn order, and everybody puts all of their plumes that way. Now, the thing I need to mention is this is where your infrastructure comes in handy. Let's do a suppose, I'm going to take this well here again, the blue well. Suppose it was way up here. I drilled a well, I just zoomed way up there, got way ahead of my competition, and drilled a well well beyond that. Well, no, that's not a good example. Well, I'll show both examples. In this case, this well is beyond any infrastructure that exists in the Permian Basin right now. There is no way I'm getting that oil there. Well, I still must take my top oil from the top, but I can't do anything with it. Like, I basically just letting it run into a ditch, but it's okay because this is the early 1900s and the environmental agencies haven't really got onto us yet. So, this just floats away and I lose it. I don't get any value for this. Another scenario might be something like this. Suppose the blue was here, and now I'm just making things up, but suppose the yellow train was up here. This guy, he's got some whippersnapper engineers in there, and he really moved them up there. What you'll notice is what you need to do is you need to compare these rows in which the well is on versus the train. And here you see if the train is equal to or above, there is infrastructure that exists here. This represents, again, the infrastructure, the pipelines, the trucks, whatever it might be. It exists, but it's not Blue's. It's not mine. So I can't transport it for free. I don't have that ability. But I can, strike a deal with Yellow and say, hey, buddy, I need to move this over to the market. I really need to sell this oil because I need some cash. Well, that's going to cost me $3,000 per plume. So then I'll have to take this oil and I have to make a decision. Is it worth giving Yellow $3,000? So I should actually add, at the beginning of this video, I said that there is only two ways to make money: by selling oil at the market or by the end game scoring with your plumes. I take that back. There's a third way to make money, and that's by having the best infrastructure and having people pay you to use it. So that's a third way. So sorry about that if you caught that beginning. I caught it now. So you have to make that decision because they'll be making money off your hard work, off your geologic discoveries over here. But you can pay them to do that and move it to the market there anyhow. So that's the extract and transport oil. And the one thing I should mention, you only do this for the wells that you have ahead of your own. If I had a second well, say here, and I took off the oil, then I still get to transport that for free because it's behind my own infrastructure. So you only care about the stuff that's up ahead of your infrastructure there. So the next thing we're going to do, looking at our handy dandy chart here, is we are going to sell our oil, and this is where the bidding comes in. And basically you just sell your oil in this order. So basically you start in the top market and you work your way down. And the rules are very, very simple for selling your oil. You go in player turn order, and you're only allowed to bid if you actually have oil in that market. So just to set it up here a little bit, suppose you had something like this. Well, then only red, blue, and purple could bid. Yellow and green would have to wait until they're in a market that they can. That's fair. No sense having them screw around with the markets if they're not even in there. So you just go down, and basically what would happen is whoever wins the bid, and again, I remind you that you're bidding with the licenses. As long as you're bidding upwards, it just keeps going round and round and round until people pass. Now, this is where it gets really awesome. Suppose somebody bluffs. Suppose purple's in there and they're bluffing. Let's just get a deck of cards here. suppose this is Purple's hand here, and they're bidding, and they got, let's see, 2, 4, 5. Let's see here, 6, 8. They got 10. They got a total value of 10 on their sales licenses. So then, suppose the bidding gets out of control, the adrenaline's flowing, life is good, they just made a discovery, they're trying to apply that to the market. So then suppose they start bid 11, and then everyone passes, like, oh no, they totally caught me. I was bluffing, and they caught me. So then what would happen is, if you cannot pay for what you bid, then you would take your cards. I recommend you just kind of shuffle them up, and now you're interested in the actual number of cards. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So then the person to my right, I think, or left, it really doesn't matter, they would randomly choose 3 cards from my hand and then to get rid of them. And so then now I'm left with this. So my bidding power has just been reduced dramatically. And then we rebid that market. So even though I think it was Purple I was saying was bluffing and got caught bluffing, I can continue to bid. I can go back in and bid, but now I don't really have a leg to stand in because my bidding power has been severely reduced. However, suppose I did not get called out on that bluff and somebody else won the bid. It's a great opportunity for you to really stretch other people's resources and make them spend more, and do it in such a way that you're not really, you're pushing them to boundaries higher than you could have if you couldn't bluff. So that's a really, really awesome mechanic, and it really makes you feel like you're making how you'd feel being an oil man making a discovery. And then the last thing that you're going to do is this, what's called check for overflow. Now these storage tanks at each of the market for each of the color, they're only so big. They can only hold, in a long-term basis, 2 of your oil plumes. So suppose in this particular example, suppose Purple won the bid to sell their oil. So they would sell these 2 plumes of oil for $3,500 each. So that would give them a total of value of $7,000. So they put this away and they get their $7,000. But now Red has got this whole stack of oil that's left there. Like, oh no. So then what you would do is, and this is not a very efficient way of getting money, is you have to take all the plumes off until you're back down to only 2 plumes. So here I've got 2 plumes, I can put them back there. And then these plumes are sold for only $1,000 each. So for those 2 plumes, I only get $2,000. Whereas Purple just sold their 2 plumes for $7,000. So you see, that's not a very good way to do it. And you go through all of the markets and you make sure that there's no more of 2 plumes of any one type. And that's what checking for overflow means. So then what you do is you pass the die to the next player, and then you rinse, repeat, and do it all over again. And the one thing I want to point out as well is what's really neat about these markets here is sometimes the markets are just crappy. They're like, you're making all this oil over here. As the game goes on, you might have all 4 or 5 oil derricks out there just pumping out oil. So each turn you're going to be harvesting 5 different oil plumes, moving them across the way, and you're going to start stockpiling oil in these tanks. Well, sometimes the market is just really, really crappy. And the thing you can think about this is when I start telling people about the different roles in the industry, sometimes your geologists and geophysicists are doing a bang-up job. They're finding the oil, they're making huge discoveries, but the market is just garbage. And so the company can still be doing very poorly, and they're wondering, well, why? And then sometimes, that just puts a little bit of pressure on your G&G guys. Like, hey, man, we're doing a good job. The market's just not there. Or other times, the engineers might be building a heck of an infrastructure, but the G&G guys might not be finding any oil to actually use that infrastructure. And so there's a lot of different personality types at play. And the one thing I want to point out too, when we were talking about different personality types, when we were talking about the different types of wells you can drill, I was showing you before how you could survey the different wells. You can flip them over and just take a look, go, do I really want to drill that or not? Well, the well spots with 2 on them, they have a little exclamation mark here, or a caution sign, because you are not allowed to survey these wells. And the thing that makes it really cool is they're either great or they're either really bad. And so if you look again at our player aid here, the cost to drill these is $6,000, and it only has 1 of 2 possible outcomes. It could be a value of 2, which is the lowest possible value of anything on the board. And for a single one, you're guaranteed that for $2,000 less. So this one here is a safer bet. Or you're going to win big and you're going to get 5 oil plumes. So let's see what this one. Woohoo! Like I should be out drilling today, because this is an awesome outcome. You're basically paying just over $1,000 a plume. Whereas even here, you're always checking the ratios. But one thing I want to point out, it is possible to actually have oil that's non-economic, which is another interesting dynamic to talk about with the petroleum industry. So suppose, suppose we have this well here. We just paid $6,000 and we only got 2 plumes out of it. So right now we just paid $3,000 per plume to drill that oil well. Well, if you go and you look at the market, you see that the lowest possible value you could sell something for is $1,500. So it's possible that, or if you had overflow, you sell the oil for only $1,000, which is $500 less than the lowest on the market. So it's possible that by drilling that well, by paying $6,000 for 2 plumes, which is $3,000 a plume, and if you take it to a market that's anywhere in the red, you have lost oil. That is a non-economic discovery for you. And so that, in the petroleum industry, we like to refer to that as that was a technical success. And so that's a really other neat thing about this game, is there's so many parts of the petroleum industry that you can talk about. You can have economic successes, and usually for an economic success, you not only need the geologists and geophysicists to be doing a bang-up job, you not only need your engineers to be building the infrastructure for you or getting a network in place for you, you also need favorable market conditions. And so sometimes the difference between a highly successful oil company and one that's just puttering along is the synergy of all of those things. And so this game just is an awesome game to talk about all the different petroleum aspects and all the different types of people that are required to make it all work. And I'm not even touching on all of them. I know every time I talk about this, new things come to mind and I talk about different aspects of it. But that gives you a feeling for if you want to play a game that really helps you immerse or introduce somebody into the petroleum industry, this is the one. And if you are in the petroleum industry, there's so many things about this game that are just going to make you, it's not going to feel like you're at work. Don't worry about that. You're not going to feel like you're at work, but you're going to feel like you're one of these guys back in the 1900s, 1903, and you are just, at the end of each day, you're just covered in black gold and just smelling like oil and being oily and being a Texas oil man. At the end of the day, go to the pub, have your beer and play a little poker and then do it all again the next day. So hopefully this gets you started on playing the game, and it gives you a feeling for how you can win and what kind of experience you have with it. So thank you very much for watching. Black Gold.